in the country. Nathan, take it away.
Yeah. So as you said, we're fourth currently, kind of a little above average, middle of the road. And ahead of us at number 1 in the Pac-12 is Oregon. Then following them is USC, and then Cal, and then us. And just right behind us is ASU, as ASU is actually ahead of us just a couple days ago in the recruiting class. But the Huskies recruiting class is ranked where it's at, mainly just because it has a smaller amount of recruits than these other schools. Like you said, they only have 15. Oregon and USC both have 22. Cal has about 19, I believe, recruits. And really, that's what's lowered the Huskies' rankings. I mean, they have a higher average player ranking than Cal at 87.85. Oregon's is 91.84, USC 91. Cal's is just below us at about 87 flat. And looking at the Huskies recruiting class, there's only 2 5-stars that are committed to Pac-12 schools. Oregon has 1 5-star, and then UW actually has the second 5-star, which is quarterback Sam Heward, who he's the, I want to say, 8th or 9th ranked player in the nation, actually. So that's a real big get. He's from Kennedy Catholic, so he's a local player. His dad, Damon Heward, and his uncle, Brock Heward, were also both Husky quarterbacks in the 90s, so it's kind of a family lineage for him coming to UW. And he's kind of the main piece, but behind him, we still have some key 4-star players in Owen Prentice, an offensive guard, Jabez Tene, a wide receiver, and then someone you talked about earlier, Will Latu, kind of an inside linebacker recruit. So overall, the Huskies recruiting class has some strong players. They're just not as deep, in my opinion, as an Oregon class or a USC class.
Yeah, and that's where it all boils down to. I think UW, maybe 3 weeks ago, actually, we had like less than 12, less than 10 recruits, but we still had the highest average recruiting class by rank in the Pac-12. And that's because we were pulling the cream of the crop, I guess you could say. We didn't have a lot of 3-stars. We didn't have that many. We didn't have any, I think, that were like further down that pecking order. So our average was really high. But as we're starting to get more recruits, we're starting to climb the ladder a little bit more. We're starting to get those numbers to mesh out. Although I think one thing that has been hurting us this year is that our out-of-state recruits and our out-of-state recruiting is really, really dropped hard, especially when compared to previous years. I'm definitely just going to chalk that up to COVID. Getting out of state. I mean, if you think about it, Washington, we're pretty hard cut off from all of the heavy football states. I mean, you got to think about the Rocky Mountains, the fact that Seattle is just in like the northwest of Washington, and the rest of Washington isn't the best. I mean, Eastern Washington's practically a desert. There's no way to get past that. And so getting some out-of-state recruiting is really hard when you just can't really get out of the state because of COVID restrictions. But aside from that, I think we have one of the actually, if not the best, well-rounded recruiting classes in the Pac-12. We're not heavy or that heavy on offense. We're definitely not heavy on defense. It's pretty well-rounded. We have recruits filling out the board. And like a way I'd love to put it when I'm comparing recruiting classes is that if we were to field our recruiting class right now for 2021, I don't think we would do too bad. I mean, I don't think we'd get first just because of like the numbers game. I mean, when you have Oregon, USC both have more than 20 commits each, and if you were to play an actual football game and you only had 15 total players, having those 5 extra people on your team is definitely going to help. But yeah, I'm not upset with where we're at in terms of the recruiting class for Pac-12. I do think, though, that some of the higher ranks, especially, might not exactly deserve their spots because of how heavy they are in certain positions.
I think that the recruiting class and the rankings in the Pac-12 are actually pretty good. I mean, I'd keep Oregon and USC at 1 and 2 just because of the vast amount of recruits they have. And if you look at it, so Oregon has 1 5-star, but then they have 15 4-stars, and USC has 15 4-stars. UW only has 3 4-stars. Cal and ASU only have 5 4-stars. So it's kind of the top two in USC and Oregon battling it out for the best recruiting class, and they separate themselves from everyone else in the Pac-12 by having this high number of 4-star recruits. And then coming back and touching on your point of in-state recruits, this is actually luckily enough for us with COVID and having these not as many out-of-state recruits. It's a really strong class in the state of Washington.
Yeah.
And you look at our top 4 recruits are all from Washington. Sam Heward, Owen Prentice, Jabez Tene, and Will Latu all are from Washington. And there's also actually 2 more who I'm going to touch on, 5 stars from Washington that the Huskies are still in the running for, you could say. Looking at 5-star number 2 player in the 2021 recruiting class, JT Tui Mo Loau. He's a defensive tackle or a defensive end on Eastside Catholic. He'd be an absolute huge get for the Huskies. The Huskies are in. He got his list of schools narrowed down to top 7, and the Huskies are in it right now. So his other favorite besides UW is Ohio State, and one of the reasons that maybe he hasn't yet decided is because he hasn't yet been able to visit Ohio State because of COVID. So this might be helping the Huskies a little bit. And then the other guy that's a 5-star from Washington, he's from Stellacombe High School, Emeka Egbuka. He's the number 8 player in the nation, wide receiver, and UW's in his top 4. So if the Huskies could get one of these guys, both of these guys, I mean, this recruiting class would be one of the best in recent times, maybe all time for the Huskies. Sam Heward, he has a relationship with these guys. So I know he's talking to them. He's trying to get them to come to UW. And if he can pull that off, then you could look at this Husky class. Even with them, they would only have 17 recruits. You could look at them as close to Oregon's level, close to USC's level, maybe above, just because 3 5-stars, 3 top 10 players in the nation. That would be huge.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've got to point out too that Stellacombe High School has an absolute knack for churning out really high level players. My high school, Clover Park, we played them. Sadly though, while I was in high school, my school is not very good. As you can tell, I'm podcasting about or commentating about college football, not actually playing it, which tells you where I would have landed in a recruiting class. But I mean, I'm not surprised that there's a 5-star wide receiver coming out of Stellacombe High School. Those guys are quick. They're really fast. Being able to pick him up would be insane. And one thing, I mean, if he's smart, right? The kid from Stellacombe, the 5-star wide receiver, he's really smart. And if he has other schools, and if he has Oregon actually in his top 4, I'd hope that he was smart enough to also look at the other schools that he has in his top 4 and realize that some of them, like Oregon, already have an insane amount of people in terms of wide receiver depth. And that's one of the kind of the strikes that I have to give Oregon.
He actually doesn't have Oregon in his top 4.
Then everything I just said before that does not matter.
Buka's top 4s are Clemson, Ohio State, Oklahoma, and then Washington.
Okay.
So I think Washington's biggest competition is maybe Oklahoma. Oklahoma's produced some great wide receivers in recent times with CeeDee Lamb. Ohio State, again, another great wide receiving producing school, Clemson too. And then you got UW, who hometown, maybe he's a fan of UW. So it'll be a tough choice for him probably, and hopefully he's choosing UW. Hopefully.
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to see him pick UW. And again, but I'd hope that no matter where he goes, he looks at the roster, he understands the depth of the position he's getting into, and he doesn't just look at where he could grow as a player, but where he can fit in. Because just because you find a good coach, I mean, this is going for UW too. I don't want to smash my own school, but like maybe he doesn't mesh well with Jimmy Lake, or he doesn't mesh well with our receivers coach. I mean, then our school wouldn't be a good fit. I hope he fits in really well here. I hope he loves our school. I hope he comes and visits soon again if he hasn't already. And really just finds a team that he fits well in, because I'd love to see this kid do well in college and move on to the NFL. That'd be absolutely amazing. Do you have any last points for this